Several months have passed since I posted the first video about my wife's modest but growing collection of vintage and antique sewing machines. Over those months, we've doubled the number of machines in the collection and thought people might be interested in what's new, hence this video. Please click on the link provided for the first video to see those machines and for an explanation of how and why we name the machines. First up, we have a beautifully patinaed coffin case for a 1902 Model 28K Singer, who we've named Amy Mae. She's in perfect operating condition and sews like a dream. Her decals are nearly pristine, and the only restoration she'll get will be a light cleaning and polishing some of the metalwork. The case, already shown, is an earlier mahogany coffin lid case. Later models had cheaper oak bentwood curved tops. The gearing produces 3 stitches per revolution of the handle. Many hand-crank machines only provide 2 per rotation. Amy is a lock-stitch sewing machine using a bullet shuttle in a vibrating carriage. In other words, the shuttle moves in an arc rather than in a straight line. Next we have Izzy Mae, an 1899 Foley & Williams. Although her small size and shape suggest she's a toy, Izzy was marketed as a machine intended for adult use, primarily as a lightweight travel machine. Selling for a mere $5, almost a tenth the price of other machines at this time, she became an extremely popular and successful chain stitching design. Although she's geared as a hand crank, her flywheel is grooved for use on a treadle. While her metalwork is in serious need of polishing, her decals are 80% good and will require only a minor touch-up to make her look like new. I never enjoy speaking disparagingly about any sewing machine, but I have to confess that poor old Nellie Mae has to be considered the ugly duckling of the collection. She's as heavy as a boat anchor and just about as attractive. We found her collecting dust on a bottom shelf in a small thrift store for only $35 and almost passed her by even at that low price. Then we spotted 2 unique things about her and decided she warranted a second chance at life. She's a 1927 Model 41 white rotary machine, which means she uses a bobbin like modern machines. What makes her unique is that instead of the typical glossy Japan finish, she was the first sewing machine to sport a matte crinkle finish designed to reduce glare. This finish became a fad and many manufacturers used it from the late 1920s into the 1930s. It eventually faded from style because, well, let's face it, it's ugly. Additionally, the deep texturing makes it difficult to clean. Another unique feature is that instead of elaborate decals for decoration, which wouldn't work on her heavily textured finish, she had scroll work cast into her body at the foundry. The machine was jammed tight and required hours of oiling, cleaning, and a bit of knocking about to get her to work, but work she does. We're considering refinishing her with a bronze plating to mirror the 1926 White Anniversary machine, with clear labeling, of course, that she isn't an original of that classic and extremely rare machine. This is Holly Mae, our 1913 Brunswick, manufactured for Montgomery Ward by the National Sewing Machine Company. She uses a bullet shuttle in a vibrating carriage. Instead of 24-karat gold transfers for decoration, like many machines in the early 1900s, she's adorned with transparent paints applied over a silver leaf base. This not only saved money and time over gold leafing, it's also enabled a wider range of colors to be used. This technique is particularly effective in the Brunswick logo, where small streaks of rainbow colors create an opalescent look. Of all of the machines in our collection, I'm determined to do the very best restoration possible on this poor old dear, Beverley May. She's an 1888 German Besultan lock using a bullet shuttle in a linear carriage. While she still sews a tight lock stitch, cosmetically and mechanically, she's a mess. 130 years of hard work have eroded almost all of her decorations. Only a very few shadows remain, which is a loss to collectors everywhere because this version, with the rare Cinderella waving ribbon logo, features some of the finest and most beautifully detailed filigree artwork ever to decorate a sewing machine. Even more sadly, the seller shipping her to us simply dumped her in a box with practically no padding. When she arrived, the box was half ripped open, many pieces on the machine were broken, most importantly the unusual front-facing handle, and many of these pieces had fallen out of the box. Replacement parts are simply impossible to find, so everything is going to have to be made by hand. The handle shown here was a first attempt. It worked, but it wasn't the correct shape. The decals are going to be extremely difficult to reproduce because this is such a rare machine, there simply aren't any good examples to build on. Still, it'll be worth it to show people the glory of how beautiful a sewing machine built almost a century and a half ago looked when it was new. On a brighter note is this magnificent 1872 Model 3 Wheeler & Wilson, who we've named Audrey May. She requires a curved needle because the needle fits in the end of an arm that moves up and down in an arc. If a straight needle was used, this arc would force the needle to move back and forth slightly, stretching the hole it makes into an ellipse, with the result that the thread wouldn't be held by it tight enough to create the loop required for the rotary hook to grab and make the lock stitch. The bobbin is unusual in that it looks like two small frisbees. It's a testament to the quality of her construction that after 146 years, she still sews a great stitch. Designed for a treadle with a 1-inch wide belt, here she's been mounted on a wood base with a hand crank for more convenience. She's one of the gems of our collection. Restoration is going to be a challenge because she was hand painted with shell gold, gold paint made with microscopically fine 24-karat gold powder. The look and character can't be reproduced with decals, so before we undertake it, we have to rediscover the techniques of making shell gold, because commercially shell gold isn't fine enough, and applying it to gloss finishes. Still, we're looking forward to this because she's such a beautiful machine. Libby May is an ideal Model T1 manufactured by New Home, which later became Janome. She was originally purchased in 1908 by Mrs. Gilbert of Yonkers, New York, and remained solely in her possession until eventually being retired and handed down in the family until she came to us. She uses a bullet shuttle in a vibrating shuttle carriage. Her decals are in near perfect condition, hard to believe in a machine that's over 110 years old. Like most hand crank machines, she has a pulley built into the flywheel for conversion to treadle use. Now we come to Tillie Mae, a very special machine. She's a little Wanzer still on her original marble base. Based on details of her construction, we date her to 1871. Similar in appearance, though slightly smaller than the Wilcox-Gibbs machines, she's actually much different in that she uses a true lock stitch rather than a chain stitch. She uses a small boat shuttle and a vibrating carriage that moves in a vertical arc rather than the more common horizontal arc. Sadly, she was a complete disaster when we got her. She had no shuttle, and these are so rare they simply can't be bought. Her finish was all but completely destroyed, many screws and pins were missing, and worst of all, the gear that drives the needle up and down was broken so that it slipped on the shaft without moving the needle. In spite of all these issues, I'm happy to report that she's now fully operable and sews a tight stitch. The key was in figuring out how to make a new shuttle from, believe it or not, the end of an old crowbar. The broken gear was fixed using a piece of steel plumbing pipe. I'm making a detailed video of her restoration and hope to have it published soon. I think you'll find it interesting. Maisie Mae is a chain stitching Singer Model 20. Her 7-spoked wheel and lack of threading guide numbers indicate that she's a version 2, manufactured from 1914 to 1926. Officially classed as a toy, her outstanding design and durable construction renders her capable of adult sewing jobs. In fact, I suspect many people chose them as an alternative to more expensive full-size machines. Next, we have a beautiful Model 19 Muller sewing machine from 1925. Her artwork, which reflects the popular Art Deco look of the time, is near perfect, and she sews a beautifully tight chain stitch. We've named her Maisie Mae. Her large size and cast iron base makes her unusually large and heavy for a toy of which she's classed, making one wonder if she was meant more as a display piece. Audrey May is a sewing machine with a bit of a mystery regarding her date of manufacture. Depending on which history you read, she was made by the A.F. Johnson Sewing Machine Company somewhere between 1860 and 1869. Yet other references state that the A.F. Johnson Company only existed from 1867 to 1869. We're assigning a date of 1867 to her because that's the only year consistent with both versions. Having said that, there's a chance she's much earlier. The number 29 is stamped on her base. This is most likely a part number. If so, then when we go to restore her, we should find other numbers on her other parts. If we don't, then it's possible that this is machine number 29. In other words, the 29th machine made by A.F. Johnson. In the history that claims A.F. Johnson started in 1860, it explains that the company began working out of a small shop, producing 6 machines at a time. Once they were finished, the 2 men making them would take them on the road, sell them, and return with the capital to make 6 more. If this is correct and they numbered their machines in order, then a number 29 machine would have been made as early as 1860 or 1861, depending on how fast they made and sold them. Either way, she's an extremely early, beautifully hand-painted sewing machine that we're proud to have in our collection. This little cutie is Libby May, a 1940 toy sewing machine made in Russia by the Orsha Company. Although she looks and feels like she's made out of cast iron, in reality she's only pot metal, a mixture of aluminum, copper, tin, and whatever low melting point metals the foundry had left over at the end of the day. As such, she is much more fragile than better made cast iron machines. Still, she's a sweet little chain stitcher mounted on an attractive wood base. We're fortunate in that this one has an aluminum cover for her storage compartment. These press-fit covers are usually long lost. This next machine is a real treasure. She's a 1929 Eldridge To Spool by National, so called because instead of a bobbin, she has a canister that holds an entire size 50 spool of thread. She's the only machine ever to employ this system, and one wonders why it didn't catch on. Her artwork is in almost perfect condition, and she sews like a dream. What more could you ask for? We call her Maisie. Cleo, short for Cleopatra May, is a Singer Model 28 with the Memphis Egyptian decal set. This set's also called the Sphinx. As one of the most popular Singer designs, it's not surprising that she's also one of the most frequently forged. These knockoffs have Made in India or Made in China cast into their bases as required by international law. However, tucked away on the underside and painted black, these telltales can be hard to find. We've searched ours under bright lights and with high magnification and are happy to report Cleo is the real thing, dated to 1899. Finally, we have Maggie Mae, a 1942 toy by Cassige. Admittedly a bit plain compared to many of the other machines in this video, you have to love the gleam of her candy apple red finish. At this point, I have a confession to make. The fact is, I'm holding out on you. There's one more new machine in our collection, which I've purposely left out until her restoration is complete. The reason is that she's so unusual that she deserves to have the spotlight all to herself. So I'll be making a separate video about her. Until it gets posted, I hope you'll pay a visit to my main website, waynesthisthandthat.com, where you can find our entire collection and many other interesting details about them, in addition to hundreds of pages covering almost as many subjects. And once again, thank you very much for watching.